Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back. So I had a comment on one of my last videos, a guy kind of asking a question about the thermal drift, and I guess your point of impact from your point of aim once the gun gets hot versus when it gets cold. What he was explaining is basically the zero completely changes after about 30 rounds with the particular gun that he was using. The rifle he's shooting is a 14.5 Geissele URGI. I'm not 100% sure on what his barrel profile is. But he was saying that he was shooting with a 14.5 Geissele URGI, Surefire RC3, so the flow-through can, and then a TA31 ACOG. So the same ACOG, basically the same setup that I've got here aside from the suppressor. And then I'm also running a Criterion Core barrel in here instead of the Geissele barrel. The suppressors, they are roughly the same weight. Both of them are flow-through suppressors. There could be a little bit of a variance in his suppressor with whatever results he got versus what I will get here today, but we shall see. The barrel profile might be a little bit thinner than what you get with the Geissele, but if anything, that's going to magnify it even more, and I'll be able to see if it's something that's happening in my gun as well as his. So essentially what he asked is a 5-round group, and then just kind of put 30 rounds in rapid succession into the target, and then another 5-round group, and see where the zeros shifted. So we're going to start here. I'm going to be running 5 rounds on this target. I'm going to go for the top orange pasty, and then we'll do 30 rounds on the bottom pasty. Where you see that group that's there already, that's from a previous, just make sure the gun was zeroed. All right, so go 5. Alright, I'm going to drop that magazine because I'm going to be putting a different one in. This magazine's got the ammunition for the zero, and this is just some ball ammo. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do 30 rounds on that bottom pasty. I'm going to go back and immediately 5 rounds with the same ammo. Top same pasty. Let's see if the point of impact shifts. And this is magazine related. This is a straight 20 round PMag. Once I get to the end of these, they have problems. So that particular malfunction, don't necessarily blame the gun on that. It's something that's repeatable. With this mag, it's just the one that I had on here. So I put these last 2 on there with that. Alright, let's go ahead and go down. Take a look at that. You'll be able to see on the spotting scope where all the rounds ended up landing, but let's go see what it did. All right, guys, and the results are in. So I want to go ahead and start this with a premise that there are several factors that are going to come into play that's going to vary from gun to gun as how much of an effect that this is going to actually have. I asked him what his barrel profile was. I mean, he never got back to me on that. But it's a Geissele URGI, complete Geissele URGI upper, 14.5 upper. And I wanted to get as close as a control as I could to this gentleman's rifle. But I don't actually have his gun here, so my results might be a little bit different than what his are, and yours might be a little bit different from mine. Now, I will admit that I am not super well versed in the effects of a barrel getting hot during a string of fire, but I do know that there is going to be a shift downrange to where the group will not only shift down, but it will also open up the hotter that that barrel gets. Reason being for that, you want to think of the barrel in a similar way that you think of water versus ice. The warmer an object gets, so think ice in this aspect, ice is going to be at 32 degrees or lower, it's going to be a solid, and then it's going to eventually, the hotter that the ice gets, or the closer to 32 that ice gets, it's going to lose its rigidity, and it's going to become closer and closer towards a liquid form. A barrel is going to do the exact same thing, just on a much more gradual scale, from ambient temperature all the way up to, I want to say steel becomes liquid at around 1500 to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in there. And essentially what is happening is the structure of that steel, the steel is expanding, and that steel is losing its rigidity the hotter it gets, until eventually you'll start to notice that barrel will droop a little bit, and then you will actually reach a critical point in the steel to where it's not even able to actually contain the explosion that's going on anymore, and that's where you'll get barrel ruptures and such happen with a lot of like this meltdown tests that you see. But on a much smaller scale, with just a normal course of fire, you are going to notice a thermal drift, and that is exactly what this gentleman was noticing. It is perfectly normal for this to happen. You just need to understand that it happens, and it is good for you to get out and shoot your gun and figure out what your gun does. So that is exactly what we experienced here today. So you can notice right here we have got the cold control group. Now this gun is not zeroed for this ammunition, but I did kind of annotate where the point of impact actually ended up being versus the point of aim for the mean center of the group. So it was 0.74 inches right and 0.45 inches low. So I went ahead, fired that group. It come out to 1.26 MOA. And then I fired a 30 round group with 55 grain M193 down here. And then I went back up and fired the exact same ammunition with the exact same point of aim. And you'll notice that there was a shift down. Now, the shift from the point of aim from the control group, not necessarily the point of aim for the center of this target, ended up being 1.3 MOA shift low and a 0.9 MOA shift right. So essentially what that is going to look like downrange is, say you're shooting a reduced size C-zone or even a C-zone size steel. C-zone steel is roughly 12 inches wide by 20 inches tall. So if you're aiming center mass on this target at 700 yards, say, that 0.9 MOA shift right that you are looking at is going to actually put you off the edge of the target. You actually notice that this is just a shift for the mean center of the group. Some of these rounds are even landing a little bit more further right than that, and that is kind of the reason that you're going to want to be able to understand what it is your gun is doing at those distances and be able to account for it. So if you are shooting a string of fire downrange and say you're struggling to get hits on one target and then you finally connect, and then you've got the data for your gun to connect with the next target at a further out distance, 600, 700, 800 yards, that data is going to be off because of the thermal shift that is put on the gun from that higher string of fire and the gun actually heating up. Now, a couple of the factors that are also going to come into play with this, not only the barrel itself flexing is going to be a mirage that you are actually going to start to notice through your scope. So once you're looking through your scope, you'll notice that the target will start to get kind of blurry and kind of shift around. That is going to play a trick on the actual sight picture that you're seeing through your scope, and that can also throw your groups off downrange. So something else that you also need to keep in mind, and then as well as the actual profile of the barrel itself. Now, the thicker that you go with your barrel, the more rigid is going to be for longer. It will eventually reach the point to where you're going to notice a significant shift, but because there's more mass there, there's more material there to retain or to distribute the heat cycle for this gun having a point of impact shift is going to take longer with your thicker, your H-bar style profile barrels, for example, versus something like this Criterion Core, which is a .625 at the gas block journal, and it's a taper from the chamber down to the muzzle. There's going to be gives and takes to everything. Those thicker barrels are going to be heavier, but they're going to withstand the heat a little bit longer. These thinner barrels are going to be lighter. They're going to be more maneuverable, but you will notice a bit more of a thermal drift. So that's something that you're worried about. That is something that you need to keep in mind when making a purchase of a barrel like this. It's also why I don't like doing government profile barrels, because it just puts a ton of weight out front. They're not very balanced, but these barrels like these Criterion Cores, or if you even want to go to like the 14.5, Centurion makes a H-bar 14.5. There is also the Husky line from Roscoe if you want to go with that. And there's a couple of other manufacturers out there that also will make a thicker profile barrel. You can go with those guys as well, and you will experience a bit less of a thermal shift with a high course of fire with those versus you will with these thinner profile barrels. So keep that in mind, guys. Again, I'm not super well versed on the exactly why, but I can kind of give you a generalized idea of what it is that you are experiencing here. And I'm sure if there's somebody that's more knowledgeable about this and might see this in the comment section, they can comment on it, and I'll pin whatever comments that are a little bit more knowledgeable on the subject than I am. But that's just kind of my down-to-earth, dumb grunt, layman's terms on exactly what it is you have got going on here. So keep that in mind whenever you're doing these strings of fire. It doesn't matter what manufacturer you have, you are going to experience thermal drift. Yes, it is normal. Yes, it's fairly repeatable. I could do this test again and the rounds will land roughly in the same spot because the barrel goes back to where it was originally. If it's not, I would look at the build process for your barrel. Something might be wrong in there, but it should go back to where it was as long as you didn't do destructive testing like tin magazine mag dump on full auto. It should go relatively back to where it was originally for the Zero. But if you guys do have any questions, drop them down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I appreciate y'all watching.